The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 4 out of 5 stars for me personally. I even rewatched it just this past week when the game came out because I saw all the hype around it and thought, why not? I'm gonna go back to the franchise. But until this point, I have never actually watched any of the other entries in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Now I've heard that part 2 is actually a horror comedy, which is very different from the original, which is a horror thriller, but I personally love a horror comedy. I love a good horror comedy. I love a trash horror comedy. If you follow me on Instagram, this will be nothing new to you. But I have no idea what direction that this movie is going to take, but I do know that I am going to end up meeting more of the Sawyer family. So that's going to be interesting. Chainsaw-wielding maniac Leatherface is back again, along with the rest of his twisted clan, including the equally disturbed Chop Top. With his sights set on disc jockey Venita Stretch Brock, she teams up with Texas lawman Lefty Enright to battle the psychopath and his family deep within their lair at an abandoned amusement park. Now, it's been a minute, but as always here on my channel, I am going to watch the movie off camera, so that way if you too want to go away and watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, nothing will be spoiled for you, because nobody wants to watch a movie that they have just watched somebody else watch from start to finish. An impostore! I think I have whiplash from how severe the genre change was for this movie. It's hard to believe that this is the direct sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because this movie didn't just go from A to B, it went from like A to 26. There was... It's fair to say that I had a few what the hell is happening moments in the last hour and 40 minutes. That was quite the movie. Imagine playing the sound of two people being murdered by a chainsaw-wielding maniac while they're driving down a highway, and then following that up immediately with the American national anthem. Like, that is how unserious Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is. Like, it doesn't take itself seriously at all. There is a shop in this town that sells absolutely nothing but chainsaws, like 4 walls of chainsaws. And then Drayton Sawyer, who is like the cook for the family, is the annual chili cook-off competition winner. Like, what? There's a special category of characters in horror movies for characters that are just creepy and disturbed, and the sort of person that you would not want to get stuck in a lift with because they give off the ultimate, like, ick factor. Well, I think it's safe to say that Chop Top has got to be really high, if not top of that list now for me, because oh boy does he give off ick vibes. I don't love what they've done with Leatherface in this movie, that they've taken him from being this like really menacing presence and turned him kind of into the bumbling village idiot. Like, they've taken away what makes Leatherface so special. The original Leatherface is the reason why even now when you go to like haunted attractions, people hear the sound of a chainsaw and want to run for the exit gates. Like, he's the reason, and they've taken everything that makes you have that reaction to Leatherface and just gotten rid of it. He's not menacing or terrifying or anything in this movie. He's just there for comedic effect. Also, I have never seen and never want to see again somebody being suggestively caressed with a 4-foot chainsaw blade, which is very obviously a size joke at the time, and the person on the other end of the chainsaw being Leatherface, who is thrusting and clearly gives himself a happy ending. Like, that is an image that will be forever burned into my brain, and it's not an image that I really wanted burnt into my brain. Like, that came out of nowhere in this movie. I was not ready for it, and I don't think I'd ever be ready for it. The car phones in this movie, like, when the height of being rich was having a direct phone into your car so that people could hear you crash on it because you were using it while driving your car. Like, this whole movie has the 80s stamped all over it. Like, they've thrown everything that was remotely popular in 1986, thrown it all into this movie as a time capsule and been like, there you go. I like Stretch. In fact, I really like Stretch. I think she's got more personality and character than the original teens in the first movie, but that is nothing against the original teens because Stretch just isn't having to share her screen time with 4 other people. When you're the final girl, or in this case, the only girl in the movie, I want to see you fight and I want to see you outsmart all the villains in the movie, and I can only say that Stretch gave me what I wanted. Like, she started fighting and she continued to fight all the way to the end, and I can appreciate that in a final girl. The horror comes from being gory violent, like the first movie was, but you do see a little bit more than you do in the first movie because a lot of the first movie is suggested violence and suggested gore. But in this movie, a lot of that then gets thrown off because they insist on putting these like over-the-top comedy moments either directly before or directly after that then pull you straight out of the horror moment. I like the location switch to the amusement park, but it only works because they've switched the genre. Like, could you have done a horror comedy and it be set in the same house as the first movie? I don't think that would have been as successful. Question is though, what am I rating this movie? Because at the beginning of this video, I said that my personal rating for the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is 4 out of 5 stars. Now, even though this is a direct sequel, it doesn't feel anything like the original. It's its own beast entirely, but I still have to make comparisons with the characters that returned from the first movie because we've already established with who they are. Is it as good as the original? No. Did I still have a good time, even though the genre is now switched to a horror comedy? Yes. Would I watch this movie again? Yes. So that has to go in its favour. I'm going to give the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 a 3 out of 5. Besides the changes that they did to Leatherface, I don't have an issue with any of the other changes. Even the genre change, I don't have an issue with. These characters were already over the top to begin with, so it makes sense to then make them even more over the top, to the point where they're now, like, bordering on absurdity. But it feels like the thing that makes the original so timeless was lost along the way when they were making the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But the one thing I am going to take away from this movie, though, is when in doubt, fire extinguisher foam will always beat chainsaw. So there you have it, my thoughts and my opinions on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 from 1986. If you've seen this movie, I would also like to know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comment section down below. I will be back on Monday with a brand new movie review, and if you would like to find out everything that I watch in the horror genre, you can find me over on Instagram. So until next time, bye!